This week, former Fox News chairman and CEO Roger Ailes died at the age of 77. Ailes, the one-time media consultant to Republican presidential candidates Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, and George H.W. Bush, is best known for creating Fox News. Fewer people know he also had a hand in the creation of this network, both as the one-time president of CNBC and the creator of America's Talking, the progenitor to MSNBC. Ailes resigned from Fox last summer amid multiple sexual harassment allegations, which he denied. I wrote about Ailes for Time.com this week, describing him as a man who, depending on your politics, your gender, or the color of your skin, was either a hero or a villain. A media mogul who left behind a legacy marked mostly by division, whose greatest creation is not just a right-wing powerhouse, but also an alternate reality, where facts that might be unpleasant for conservative Republicans and Trump supporters are replaced with alternative facts or even ignored. And back with me now, Joan Walsh of The Nation, conservative commentator Kirsten Haglund, and Jonathan Capehart of The Washington Post. And thank you guys all for coming back. So I want to first go to you on this, Kirsten, because it can seem kind of sort of harsh, you know, and we are the competitor, obviously, of Fox News. So it is, but the reality of the difference between what people who watch Fox know and hear, if they own, and they are more likely to only watch Fox if you watch Fox than people who watch MSNBC are to only watch MSNBC. They tend to jump around. I want to show you a screen grab. Media Matters compiled 51 screenshots that showed how Fox covered the Comey story about Comey being fired, dating from when the story broke to the evening of May 12th. So 4 of those screen grabs here. If you look at the one in the upper left-hand corner, it says "Lock her up." It's about Hillary Clinton. It's about Hillary Clinton. Media hysteria about Comey firing. Dems in meltdown over Comey firing. Flashback. Democrats attack James Comey. And then we did, and this is cut 3 for my team, the night that the news broke about the Comey memo, or about Comey, about the Comey, you know, conversation with Donald Trump. MSNBC ran a breaking news headline that said Trump asked Comey to shut down the Flynn investigation. CNN, sources, Comey memo states Trump asked him to end Flynn probe. Fox, Clinton Foundation, where is it now?
Right. Well, here's the thing, and this is what Roger Ailes was very good at, was creating a style. He understood that show business was show business.
Definitely.
And understood his audience very well and knew what sold. And that is what Fox has continued to do. And it very much is in the model of entertainment, right? Casting villains and creating roles for people to play and then inserting people into those roles. And, you know, I think the reason why it took on so well, especially in the 1990s when you think of when Fox News was created, is I don't think that Roger Ailes and Fox created this division, but what it was a response to the division that we were experiencing in the country with the impeachment scandal and how Republicans went very, very hard against the Democrats. And that was when you really saw this split in the country started to exacerbate. And so where the audience went, that's where the business goes. So I think, obviously, the legacy is very complex. And, you know, as Gretchen Carlson, another former Miss America, a dear friend of mine who I just respect and hold her in such high regard, you know, I think that there's a lot to be said for what he built as a business, but also the legacy that he left and the people that he worked with. And we should always try to, you know, balance and look at both, because as individuals, when we're remembered, we always, you know, want to be remembered for more than just our demons.
No, and you said something very important that brings me right back to one of my favorite books that I keep on selling this book, and I'm not getting a commission for it. Joan, you wrote a book called What's the Matter with White People that I still, I tell people to read it, because what it's about really is what Kirsten just said, which is that you had this group of Americans who came to believe that the media, that everyone was sort of conspiring against them. They were New Deal Democrats who became Reagan Republicans. And Fox served that constituency.
But, you know, Kirsten, of course, is being more charitable to Roger Ailes than I would be, because it's not as though Roger Ailes walked in the mid-1990s and found this divided country. Roger Ailes divided it as a young political consultant, as a man who worked with Richard Nixon, as a man who helped Richard Nixon tap into the racial and civil rights and anti-war backlash that was splitting the country in the 60s. He helped Nixon become president, and he did it with a less overt racism. There's a famous story where Roger Ailes says, we're going to get this guy who's going to ask Nixon in a town hall, hey, you know, Mac, what about those N-words? And it's going to give Nixon a chance to say, how dare you, sir? And then he pivots to law and order, and he's basically saying a lot of the same coded things. That was Roger Ailes. He did that in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and then built a business on it in the 90s.
And I mean, Jonathan, it is the way that he helped George Herbert Walker Bush get elected. Right. Willie Horton, that whole idea of using sort of, the black body as sort of the scary thing that you've got to vote because here it is sort of dangling out there is part of his legacy, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The word that we haven't talked about is grievance. Roger Ailes built an entire network around grievance of the very people that Kristen and Joan have been talking about. John Klein in the Washington Post today on the op-ed page talks about how he and Roger Ailes would go to lunch at Michael's and have the premier table with a vast view of the room of all the media elite who lunch at Michael's, particularly on Wednesdays, and people coming up to the table, kissing his ring, giving him compliments, singing his praises. But the thing that John Klein found most remarkable is that even though the media elite of the country were bowing down to Roger Ailes at this restaurant, he felt aggrieved. He said, yeah, they're saying all those nice things, but they hate doing it. And so, I piggyback on what Joan said. I'm not inclined to be as charitable to Roger Ailes. I don't begrudge him his business success, but I do take issue with how he built that business and what it's done to American political discourse, to the point now where we have a president of the United States who really challenges not only who we are as a country, but our very democratic small d institutions.
And that sense of grievance, it sounds like Donald Trump. It's very similar. And Donald Trump is obviously a great consumer of Fox News. He is a big fan of it, and he sort of echoes that same, they're not being nice to me, even if they are, they don't want to do it. It does seem, Kirsten, that Ailes transmitted that sense of grievance down the line, because Gabe Sherman had this tweet that it was really sort of what this morning. And of course, he's the editor, National Affairs editor of New York Magazine, a longtime biographer of Ailes. During the eulogy for Roger Ailes, his son apparently threatened the women who alleged harassment against his father. And the quote was, "I'm coming after them and hell is coming with me." That kind of anger is interesting.
It is sad, and frankly it's unacceptable in light of everything that happened. But I will say that I truly do believe that there is an effort within Fox to change. There is a knowledge that things need to change, that culture needs to change, obviously, with the boys, the Murdoch boys, coming in and taking things in a different direction. They also understand where their audience is going, right? They're getting older and older. Young people, right? They have Netflix, Hulu, every other kind of media streaming device in their hand. So how do we engage those younger viewers? I think they understand that demographic is shifting and they need to do something different. So, it's a transition phase and everyone's kind of working through that. And I think making sure that they're not tied to these much darker parts of Roger Ailes' legacy is a big thing for them.
Yeah, Bob Beckel fired for the second time.
The only time I met Roger Ailes, he explained the magic of Fox News to me, which was, I made an audience from people who are 55 to dead. They're white men sitting on their couches with the remote control all day and all night. And then he looked at me and he said, and they don't want to see you. They don't even want to know you exist. And I didn't know all the things that meant.
Right.
But it really was a picture of how he was catering to a certain kind of grievance. Yeah. And maybe I hope the Murdoch brothers realize that is a declining audience, and they change their practices radically.
And Jonathan, one of the other things that hasn't changed, obviously over there at the house that Roger Ailes built, is this idea of deflecting bad news about Donald Trump into something else. And the current one is actually really tragic. The family of Seth Rich sent a cease and desist order to a Fox News contributor. And this was a young man who worked for the DNC. He was killed after a mugging, and they decided to turn his death and his family's pain into a new conspiracy theory about Hillary Clinton and her campaign. What is that about?
Yeah. I'm not sure what that's about, but what it shows is a lack of shame. I wrote a piece saying that President Trump lacks the one thing that his 44 predecessors have, and that's a sense of shame. And shame is that emotion that blocks you from doing something that you should later regret or that you shouldn't do to begin with. And the fact that a grieving family, not for the first time, has to demand that Fox stop doing this is really, really tragic. Why Fox continues to do this against the family's wishes is beyond me.
Yeah, I think they should listen to Kirsten, because I think she could make them better. Kirsten Haglund, Jonathan Capehart, Joan Walsh, thank you all very much. And up next,
thanks, Joy.
Thank you. Mike Pence delivers the commencement address at Notre Dame as students deliver their own message. That's coming up.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.